this, and that's good. I've answered this one now. I have all.
It's one of my frustrating things because I felt like I really needed to do more research into this, and I'm just now diving in and.
You got a lot going on. It is what it is.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
So you ready? You know what to do?
Oh yeah.
Get yourself all comfortable.
It is what it is with Michelle Snider.
Don't you know it?
It is what it is.
I'm trying to make sure you can be seen.
Yeah.
I like pull it up like, nope.
It's like whack-a-mole. When are we jumping off?
Oh, in like 38 seconds. Are you ready?
Do we get that cool countdown? 1, 2.
No. We get to watch the clock over there. 19 seconds.
60 minutes.
That tick, 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 tick.
Makes me want to talk like those ladies from that SNL skit. Yeah, good times. Good times.
Good times.
I love the taste of your sweaty balls in my mouth.
Oh, okay. Hello, and welcome to Take a Pause. This is Michelle Snider with KGPC Radio in Oakland, California. I'm here with Robert Hinton, who is a U.S. vet and now a journalism student at Laney College. We're both journalism students, can't lie.
Hooray.
I know, we took on the most... I mean, I wouldn't say it's the most unrewarding job. Teachers are probably on the top.
Yes.
Maybe veterans as well have some issues of...
My GI Bill money is being well spent.
That's
sure.
good.
For sure.
Spend it all.
Spend it all.
But I'm really glad that you joined the Laney Tower with me, because I don't know when it comes down to it, you're really good at, what I'm interested in is investigative journalism. And for people who don't know the depths of that, which I didn't actually know how important it was, but it's where you go in and we actually dive into one little specific area. So we're diving into lately the housing crisis, and we did a whole special on the housing crunch, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But I did want to ask you something, because you
Please.
You were having one of those, what grinds my gears moment the other day.
You know what really grinds my gears? Really ham up my accent.
Ham it up, baby. It was the caravan. So as a U.S. veteran, can you actually tell everybody a little bit of your history?
So I was in the United States Army Reserve from 1999 to 2008. And I served 6 years as a military police officer out of Londonderry, New Hampshire. And then when I got back from my Iraq deployment, I was a little lost, didn't know what to do, was a little upset with my experience overseas. So in order to, have more of a understanding of what was going on in the areas that I was operating in, I switched over to intelligence, and I went to school to become an interrogator. And it really, I think that's what lends itself, obviously being a cop lends itself to investigative journalism too, because you're taught methods of investigation. But I took it a step further in going into the intel route, because now I was learning how to interview people and how to ask follow-up questions and control questions, and to really dig down deep into the heart of an issue, and to question it all the way through until you're satisfied that you have all the information that you need. And after I got out of the military, I moved to California in 2008, and I ended up going to culinary school, and worked as a cook and a chef for about 6 years, and just felt unfulfilled about the experience. And I knew I still had money left over from my initial schooling, and decided to go back. Went to Berkeley Community College last year, which is part of Peralta school system, and studied global studies. And I realized I am not as good at language as I thought I was, specifically Spanish. And I also got crushed in the follow-up class to stats. So I, realized, well, I like I like the political aspect of stuff, but I'm not very good with stats and I'm not very good with language. So what else could I do? And, writing has always fascinated me. I wrote a lot when I was a kid, journals and short stories and things. And I saw that Laney had a journalism program and signed up. And here we are.
Here we are. So, what was grinding your gears, pretty much?
So the issue that I have, and thank you for reminding me of this segue. The issue that I have is the National Guard is utilized in instances of crisis in our country.
Mm-hmm.
All right, the National Guard helps out with fires. They help out with floods. And that is what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to safeguard the nation, okay,
Mm-hmm.
against natural disasters and threats. There are a lot of people that view this caravan of migrant workers making their way through Central America right now. They're staged in Mexico City right now as a threat. I do not consider them a threat. As I said, I worked in the kitchen industry for 6 years, and many of the people I worked with were undocumented. And they were undocumented because it would take them too long to receive citizenship if they ever achieved citizenship. So they had to sneak in, and that was the only way they could safely support their family south of the border.
Mm-hmm.
And now we have our troops fortifying our border to keep people out that need our help.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what it really comes down to. These people need our help. And if you know anything about the types of work that migrant workers do, these jobs are not jobs that are staffed by Americans. Americans will not stand in a field hunched over at a 45-degree angle for 14 hours a day. It's just not going to happen. Farmers have tried to get people in that are legal, and they can't do it. You know? So to block these people that are victims, really,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
the majority of them are victims. We know this. Like the research has been done to tell these people, hey, we don't have a spot for you, even though we do need the type of labor that you are willing to provide.
Yeah.
We don't have a spot for you. And to utilize our United States forces to keep these people out, I just feel like is a mismanagement of the things that we have in this country, and it's a mismanagement of our troops, and I think it puts our troops in a really bad situation.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of them, I can only imagine that some of them either know someone that's undocumented, has someone in their family that's undocumented, but yet they're being used as an apparatus to suppress these people.
And some of the troops themselves are undocumented, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I served with people overseas
Mm-hmm.
that were not U.S. citizens, and there's even been, I believe Vice did some spots on people that served overseas,
Mm-hmm.
whether it be Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan. They came home. As a result of their deployment, they had some issues with the law enforcement and got in trouble, and then got kicked out of our country. People that actually fought for this country and that were told, if you do this, a pathway to citizenship will be made available to you.
Mm-hmm.
And they just, they were just kicked out and marginalized.
Yeah.
Like we see with a lot of people nowadays.
Yeah, and I mean, that's a really deep topic, and I can't understand why there's so much fear in our country.
Mm-hmm.
And my family is, all military family, Air
Mm-hmm.
Force, Navy,
Mm-hmm.
It runs real deep, World War I, World War II, all that. So, I was never taught, the one thing I was taught was not to fear things, not to fear people, not to judge them, not to, you actually have to have critical thinking in the way that you approach people and look at them for who they are and what their actions are. And instead we have so much fear from people who probably watch, some sort of propaganda that's not real news. And it just makes me sad because I've actually seen some of my family fall into that. I grew up where we're supposed to be an honor. we're supposed to have honor and integrity and be brave. Home of the brave is what, I remember us being, and now it's like we're home of the scared, of the migrant caravan. It's really sad.
Absolutely. And, the thing about it is, it's the majority of people, especially when we talk about the middle class, when we talk about the lower middle class, these people like us, they have to work really hard to get by nowadays.
Yeah.
Right? Everybody's got to work really hard. They don't have time to vet the news. They don't have time to decide who's right and who's wrong. So as soon as they see someone that echoes their ideology, that's who they plug into, right? That's how people get stuck into the CNN cycle or the Fox News cycle, and that's what, they feel represents them. So, they stick with it, and they allow that narrative to become their own narrative.
Yeah, they allow it to be an entertainment kind of thing, and they're bringing it into the real world.
Yeah, and entertainment until it has a negative impact on their psyche or their ideology.
Well, I don't even think they know it has a negative impact. Like, it's like they don't see it.
No, yeah. Exactly.
And we see it, and then we're the ones that are wrong. But anyways, I'm glad that you brought a little insight to that, because I really would love it from, someone who actually has this experience.
Mm-hmm. Now, I will say I'm a very empathetic person, and that's because of my family and also due to my wife, because I can be a little bit of a jerk sometimes. I have a lot of buddies in the military that do not see it that way.
Yeah.
And it's hard having those discussions with them, because a lot of times people, regional bias comes into it, and people say, oh, you live in California, that's why you think like that. You're around a bunch of hippies and Antifa and everything, you live in the San Francisco area, and yeah, I mean, okay, yeah, but I just open my eyes to everything, and I allow the truth to come to me, and the truth of the matter is, like, we don't have to worry about migrants who want to get a job washing dishes at a restaurant.
Yeah.
Like, we don't have to be afraid of those people.
I thought it was interesting. So there was one comment that I had seen when we were doing Word on the Quad, which is just a question that we asked students on the quad. We didn't actually publish it in the print version, but I put it on our website, and everybody was pretty much like, there should be open borders. That was the question, was, do you believe there should be open borders? And most people were like, yeah, people have been migrating all these years. This is their home too. They need a safe place. And then one teacher, who's a history teacher, said, we need borders to understand and control who's coming in, like, know the numbers, know what we need to provide as a government. And that to me also did make sense, as so I think that allowing them to come the way they have been, where they ask for what is it called?
Like a temporary work permit. It's a type of visa.
Or where they ask, they
asylum.
say that, asylum.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I think that is a legitimate reason for them to be coming here.
Absolutely.
I have so many friends who are from immigrant families and been here, maybe even some of their families been here for generations. Some of them are new or whatever. And I don't know, immigrant families, being from San Francisco, being from the Bay Area all my life, immigrant families taught me a lot. They taught me how to be a better family, to work together. So I feel like that's something that we tend to miss in our society. As a culture, we are so individualized that we forget that what it's like to actually work together. And then there's this almost resentment, because you see these families over generations start to make it. So yeah, someone's grandfather may have been in the fields doing farming, but their grandchildren will be going to college and being successful, and then that's when these people feel like they're taking our jobs and they're taking our votes, and country isn't going to be like mostly white anymore, and it's all scary.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you've experienced this in your own family, but my grandmother, rest in peace, Grandma Bob, she used to get really irritated when people spoke Spanish in her presence.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why. I was not, and as a young kid, you try to challenge your elders sometimes, when you think you understand something, and, she never really had, she said, she fell back into the same narrative that a lot of people do that oppose people speaking a different language in front of them in this country, is that, well, you're in this country now, and in this country we speak English.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, that's fine, but my great-grandmother, right, was
Mm-hmm.
born in Ireland.
Mm-hmm.
And people have trouble understanding the way I talk when I start talking really fast and with my accent, blah, 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 blah. I mean, people could, I don't even know, I couldn't understand, like, my mother when she was impersonating my great-grandmother from Ireland,
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, yeah, she's speaking English,
Yeah.
but it's not the type of English we speak in this country.
Well, there's people from the South that will come out here and you won't even know.
Oh,
They're
yeah.
American and you don't hear.
Oh, I was in the military, trust me, They send you over to talk to Sergeant Gumpum or something.
Yeah.
He's like, hey, we need to go down there. There's a bit of my
No,
does that make my
no,
whole
no,
life?
no.
I'm like, mm-hmm.
Yeah,
All right.
I'm really good at translating that though.
This military.
All right, so in a real quick, short other subject I like to go into, what about, we almost have all the states. I just found out, was it the state of Utah just made marijuana legal? They voted to, can you believe that?
I think medically legal, not recreational.
Yeah, I have to look into that. But, I remember going into a veteran place and they were saying, it was a dispensary just for veterans.
Mm-hmm.
And they were saying, if it wasn't for medical marijuana, I would probably be doing something harder. I'd be doing heroin.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Or I have done heroin and I needed it.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's kind of like, it just kind of hit me because I'm like, our federal government still ignores what people need, and not only just anybody, but the very people that serve us.
Well, I mean, as they say, follow the money, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if people are smoking doobies instead of popping pills, that's going to be a lot of money that the pharmaceutical industry will lose.
Mm-hmm.
And if they haven't gotten in front of this yet, which I don't think they have, and by that I mean starting to do the research into marijuana and cultivating, I shouldn't call it marijuana, I'm sorry, cannabis advocates, it's cannabis. I grew up in Boston, that's, we called it weed, dope, marijuana.
Trees.
Trees. Cannabis wasn't part of our vernacular, so
I mean,
old habits die hard.
You'd be snitching on yourself.
Yeah, right, exactly. But cannabis, it's really easy. You can grow it in your backyard. I can't
Yeah.
synthesize a pill in my backyard.
Mm-mm.
So, these guys are working with a lot of politicians that want to keep this down. They want to keep cannabis controlled, because they also, when it does get to the point where they can no longer federally keep it illegal and keep it as a Schedule 1,
Mm-hmm.
which is the same schedule, by the way, as heroin and cocaine,
Yeah.
which is
it's
crazy.
And they also refuse to allow any kind of research be.
That's
done
what
that.
Schedule 1, that's why the designation really hurts, is that when something is Schedule 1, you cannot research it. And that's why we are trying, or a lot of advocates are trying to get it rescheduled so that we can actually look at it. And I will point this out really quick, and because I want people to do research on this individual, but Tulsi Gabbard,
Mm-hmm.
she is a senator or congressman, I'm sorry, I don't remember,
Mm-hmm.
Ms. Gabbard, but she last year put forth legislation to get cannabis rescheduled so that we can do the proper research on it.
Mm-hmm.
And she possibly might be running in 2020. So keep your eyes on Hawaii and Tulsi Gabbard, because she is definitely an advocate for the people, an advocate for social programs. She's a big Bernie person, and she's just a very intelligent woman. And yeah, I mean, vets need cannabis.
Mhm.
I use cannabis.
Yeah.
I use it every day. And I consider myself a pretty cogent individual, relatively speaking.
Yeah, no.
And yeah, it just helps regulate mood, and a lot of guys would be probably doing a lot harder drugs, whether it's prescribed or unprescribed, if they didn't have access to cannabis.
Yeah.
Can I give a plug right now?
I thought we weren't supposed to do
Oh, that's
plugs.
right. Well, it's a nonprofit, and it helps veterans.
As long as it's not a profit.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's called Operation EVAC. They help vets learn how to grow as a result of their service to our country. So Operation EVAC, everybody.
Okay, that's great. So great nonprofit to support.
Support vets.
All right, so let's get into this nitty gritty.
All right.
So my first question was actually, I wanted to know, because I don't know what your past history and this kind of stuff, and I know you've seen all kinds of crazy stuff in your life already, but when we, so I think it was like October 24th, we went down to the estuary camp
At Lake Merritt.
With Nino Parker, who is, he himself is a homeless man who took over that parcel of land. Was it called Camp One or?
He refers to it as Camp One, yes.
Yeah. So and he protects the senior homeless residents. He keeps people who may be violent or doing drugs away. He is all trying. He tries to make a really safe environment. He wants the grandparents who are homeless to be able to see their grandchildren, have a place to visit. Like, these are things that he speaks about a lot, that he's very passionate about. I'm just curious, walking into that camp, what was your...
So when I go into places like Nino's camp, being overseas really helped me prepare for that, because during a conflict, or even after a conflict, I was in Bosnia after the war there, and I saw a lot of displaced people. I saw a lot of displaced people in Iraq, and I don't know. I guess because of my experience, I'm not that rattled when I go into a situation like that. I get emotionally triggered because I see people living in conditions that I myself would not want to live in. So therefore, it's my own personal belief that if I determine something to be unacceptable to my living standard, then how can I look at someone else and say, yeah, but it's okay for them. So, when I go in there, I just try to look around and, look for friendly eyes, I'll say, so that I can go up to someone and introduce myself and just talk to them and figure out who they are and why they're there, and just listen for a second. Because honestly, with a lot of people that are homeless, it's a little exercise that I've tried to do, just to make myself more empathetic towards others, is make eye contact. Maybe they'll ask you for a quarter or a dollar, and maybe you have one, maybe you don't, but make eye contact, smile. Have try to, if someone isn't acting in an aggressive manner, try to relax your posture a little bit. And granted, it's different for different people. Different people have different reasons for responding to the presence of others. But yeah, just try to just show someone that you acknowledge their existence and their being.
Treat them like everybody else, pretty much.
And it's funny because when that happens, people just come up to you.
And they just you start to realize how they're actually pretty normal. I mean, I've walked through and underneath the bridge, and I see people who, there was one guy who would keep repeating himself. You can tell there's some people that, they definitely have mental health issues that they have to deal with. But even then, it was he wasn't scary. He just, he jumped up, and he's like, he has 2 boxes of cereal, and he's like, can you read this to me? He just stopped everything and asked me to do that, and I told him it's a box of Cheerios, and he was like, thank you, and then he just kept repeating, sat back down, and it's from my own experience, I always feel first I feel almost am I intruding, because this is their home, and I don't want them to feel uncomfortable because of me. It's not about my comfort when I go in there, and then the second thing that I notice is how more they are more afraid of us.
Absolutely.
Than anything else. So, to be afraid of going into that situation there's no reason for it, because they're the ones that are often objected to violence and all kinds of things going on in the streets. These are our most vulnerable members of society, and unfortunately we haven't been taking care of the problem for a long time. What you wrote here for this article that was published November 8th in the Laney Tower, you wrote about Joe DeVries,
Yes.
who is the assistant to the Oakland City Administrator.
Yes.
And you also wrote about Nino Parker. So it was like Nino Parker as a homeless man versus the city, the person who is the face of the city when they go in and try and evict these camps. This is the guy who is coming and talking or negotiating or all,
Yes,
all
I
of this
believe
kind of
Nino
stuff.
refers to Mr. DeVries as King of the Evictions.
King of the Evictions.
You will not find that in my piece because I was trying to write a
Oh, you-
non-biased piece.
Yeah, totally. You know, I don't think a lot of people realize, and they get frustrated with us about these kind of things.
Journalists, you mean?
Yeah, journalists. We can't really play into the politics. I mean, unless we're writing opinion pieces, but when
Exactly.
we're reporting, you have to be very careful because you have to have your relationships. If you don't have your relationships, you're not going to get information. So I think you did a very good job. You were just, you wrote what Joe DeVries was talking about,
Mm-hmm.
and you wrote what Nino Parker was talking about, and you talked about the comparison of these two in the frustration. So to start with, you know, it says DeVries does not like the term tough sheds, which Parker and activists use to refer to the cabins, because they are actually from a company called Tough Sheds.
Tough sheds. That's what they're called.
So everybody has been calling it that. Instead, he prefers to call them community cabins, and he calls the removal of homeless residents from city property closures, whereas Parker refers the term to evictions, because as you wrote, city property, that's actually public property.
Yes.
I think there's a big thing between the city where they're like, it's our property,
Mm-hmm.
and activists are like, it's public property.
Mm-hmm.
This is like this whole, you know, let's not call it tough sheds, let's call them cabins, community cabins, and they're only available for 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
There is how many?
Available to residents for 6 months.
Yeah,
And then-
available to residents for 6 months, and then supposedly they're supposed to be somewhere else they go, but I'm still unclear about that. Do you know what happens after 6 months?
Well, basically, the city caps someone's residency at the camps for 6 months.
Mhm.
And the goal is that after the 6 month period, or even before, that individual will have received counseling in order to find some sort of housing, some sort
Mhm.
of, you know, HUD regulated affordable housing. All right. And just to give a little backstory, the Tough Sheds, the community cabins that we're referring to, is a program that the city of Oakland has designed, that they find a large homeless encampment on the streets, and they go and they conduct a census of the people that live immediately within that camp, all right? And then they determine, based on that they can open a Tough Shed camp or community cabin camp, as the city refers to it, in proximity to that, and then move those individuals from that homeless camp into this now city managed camp. So the issue with that is that, as it states in the article, that one of these camps, I can't remember which one,
Which location?
what would the location with 101 individuals in it?
Oh, that was the Northgate. I was gonna mention that because the Northgate camp, is the one that was on 27th and Northgate.
Yes.
That was the one I went to last year.
Mhm.
So 1 year ago, I went over there and was giving away blankets and
Mhm.
jackets because a lot of people already gave food. Like people were,
Mhm.
you know, saying, "Oh, what do we got to do?" And I was like, "Well, what do they need?" I went down there one day and asked them what they needed, and they said, "We need lanterns, we need bleach,
Mhm.
we need hygiene products, we need socks, we need jackets, we need lots of blankets," and they were so happy to get them. But the one thing I noticed about this, so this was one of the biggest ones, and I thought there was more than 100 people there. It wrapped around, so 27th and Northgate is on the edge of where there's West Oakland, and then on the
Mhm.
other side is pretty much where they call it now, what do they call it, Uptown?
Uptown.
Yeah.
Uptown.
So
Not
there's
downtown.
the Whole Foods, and then the freeway entrance
Mhm.
to 580.
Yeah.
and underneath that was just this really long row.
Yes,
Of
I drove by it
tons
all
of-
the time because my gym's over by on Webster, so I take that exit to get to my
Yeah,
gym.
so you would see that all these people there, and all of them were, a vast majority of them were African American,
Mm-hmm.
and they were all from West Oakland.
Mhm.
Like, and there was, when I was talking to them, there was like, young women would come to me and they'd say, please get me a jacket for my mom. Like, they were living in camps together as whole entire families.
Mm-hmm.
Like, these people came from West Oakland as a whole neighborhood. These people were neighbors with each other, and it's almost like this whole entire neighborhood was evicted from West Oakland, and they found this underneath freeway. So, according to here, let's see, what was your numbers on that camp? Was over 100.
101 per
Yeah.
the city. The city
Mhm.
said.
So,
But-
so the camp only, but the new camp, the community camp that's Tough Sheds,
Mm-hmm.
only houses 40 people. Where do
That is
those
correct.
other people go?
That we do not know.
Mhm.
And that was a question that I posed to Mr. DeVries in the course of investigating this article, and they don't know.
Mhm.
They say that the people that are there to do the census and to welcome people into these camps, they make people that aren't able to be housed in the Tough Shed camps aware of other places that they could go, like the Henry Robinson shelter that's also run by the city.
Mhm.
But you know, here's the issue. There is that we chase these people off, and it's, you know, it's already very traumatizing to have to live in the city. There's no
Mhm.
security. There's no walls protecting you like we have in our apartments and our houses. Somebody could just cut through the side of your tent and come in and get you. You
Mhm.
know.
And there's been times when people threw things and lit the tents on fire.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And as we saw at the 27th and Grand, or I'm sorry, Northgate and 27th Camp did burn down eventually.
Was it that one? I know that the one on East 12th keeps burning down, and
Mhm.
that's a whole other issue. That one. So I talked to
It's like a waterfall of homelessness issues that just
Yeah.
never get
So-
remedied. There's no bottom, there's no pit, there's no
So the
end.
East 12th camp is huge. If you ever drive past there, you can't miss it, and it's burned twice
Mhm.
now. Actually, I think it's 3 times. There's another part side to that burned down before. I live by there, so I drive past it all the time. That was one of the camps I visited, and when I first visited it, it was not big at all. There
Mhm.
was like maybe 10 camps out there, 10 tents. There was one who was really advocating for them and running it, and he wanted it clean.
Mhm.
It just drove him crazy, and he was looking over this woman, like he was really, really protective of her, and she had this cute little dog, and you know, so I got them some supplies and everything, and the next thing I know, all of a sudden, you know, the village is getting built up, but apparently what happens is that the city has been clearing other camps, and then they've been forcing people to go over to that camp, so like
Mhm.
it gets overrun,
Mhm.
overcrowded. There's rats biting people at that camp.
Mhm.
You know, can you imagine like living out on the street? Like it's actually underneath a freeway, and when it rains, it turns into the slushy mud. There's like water pouring down there, but it's out of the way. And unfortunately, because they've been, you know, just pushing people and forcing them to go to this camp, there's also a lot of hoarding. There's cars
Mhm.
parked there. People are making their own makeshift housing there, and there's just blankets covering it. So after a while, it's just not, it's not sanitary. It's not healthy. There's too many people there. Unfortunately, you know, have you ever watched that show Hoarders?
I am aware of its existence, but I cannot watch stuff like that. I get a little depressed. when I
Yeah,
watch
it's
stuff like that.
depressing, but I love. To me, it's like a psychological research thing.
Yes.
So I love to understand people, and that's
Mhm.
why I watch it. And one of the most interesting things that reminds me of this particular issue of like why homeless people also probably cling to things, and they don't want to go to, say, these Tough Sheds because they lose a lot of their stuff.
Which
There's
is one
not
of Nino's concerns of
Yeah.
moving into the Tough Shed. Where he's going to put his stuff.
So, you know, in the show Hoarders, a lot of the counselors that would come up, they would say, this person is traumatized because they lost somebody. So the problems happen because they lost somebody or they lost something or something traumatizing happened to them or they had a really traumatizing childhood. And what happens is to they need to control their environment, and they also have this need to collect things because they're afraid of losing.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So that's why they can't let go of anything. They don't see it as trash. They see it as something that they have to hold on to.
People
And
attach
it just,
memories to these things.
yeah.
And by giving up those possessions, they're losing a memory.
Mm-hmm.
I've had this conversation with my mom.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. I mean, it's easy for me to say that, oh, you got to get rid of your stuff. Like, I've never lived since 2008 when I got out of the military. I haven't lived in the same place for more than 2 years.
Yeah.
And that's back and forth between the East and West Coast and to Hawaii. And so it's easy for me to say, but in looking at that from my own lens and realizing that, you know, things aren't important, I, like you, have looked into hoarding and why people do it and the impulses that cause people to, you know, have that proclivity. And I realized that, yeah, that's what it is. It's
Yeah.
people, you know, holding on to memories and holding on to their own identity too.
And
like,
trying to normalize. You know, like you're not in a
Mhm.
normal situation
No,
if you're on the
yeah.
streets. So putting out a couch, getting your car,
Mhm.
setting up a house of any kind of makeshift house.
Building a
that's-
fire pit,
Yeah.
you know, someplace
Trying
just
to
to
find
rap with your
comforts.
neighbors, you know.
You know, trying to find comforts at home. That's what they're doing.
Mhm.
This is human nature, and we don't really tend to even think of society in that level.
Mhm.
It's like, no, we're just gonna set up these rules, and you abide by these rules, and that's it.
Mhm.
So I think that that's a real miss that we don't really understand that kind of stuff. But the fact that also, you know, so you said that the people are getting offered after 6 months another location to go to, but HUD has cut their funding.
Mhm.
So that's the major issue. It's almost like a catch-22. So are we chasing our tail here? Like the whole entire issue, we used to have public housing. And a lot of it, like in San Francisco, most of the projects, there's Alamany projects. I don't know if you know Alamany projects, but if you ever drive down
I used
280,
to live off of Alamany in San Francisco.
yes, so if you're ever driving off 280, there's these apartments,
Mhm.
but they're actually housing projects. And
Yeah.
they kicked everybody out, and they sold it to private company. And they claim that they're going to let everybody back in. But there's no security in that.
Is this the one that it's right down the road from where the giant farmers market is
Yeah.
on Sundays?
Yeah, you could
They've
see it.
kicked everybody out of that?
Yeah. That was like about a year or two ago.
Really?
And they've been upgrading it. So that's
I
not
have seen
public
the
housing
upgrades.
anymore.
I've seen all the work that they're doing over
Yeah.
Because I used to be, I mean, I still do it now and then. I'm a Lyft and Uber driver, and definitely have gone in that neighborhood and picked people up and dropped people off. And I
Mhm.
saw all the work they were doing.
Yeah, but it's now run by a private company. So so the city of San Francisco, yeah, sells housing projects. This was stuff that was done a long time ago, and it did work, but it didn't entirely work because the problem is that people were like, well, why are we pouring all this money into housing and these people aren't getting jobs? But there was no jobs for them.
Yes.
There's no good education. There's, you know, our whole entire system is just like, it's almost as if you think that certain entire groups of people just need to not exist.
Mhm.
And you're not gonna, we're not gonna solve these problems like this. So,
No.
that also makes me wonder about, so in your article, it also says 3 new community cabin sites are being planned as well. Okay. The city estimates that 320 people will be housed in these new camps at a cost of $4.5 million over 18 months in operational costs. Couldn't we not, like $4.5 million, I'm pretty sure we can actually build housing units to house those people. And we have, how many, do you know the number of how many, because I know you were asking me this and I wasn't really sure. Somebody had said 7,000 and I wasn't sure if it's the Bay Area, if it's Oakland. I know that San Francisco itself has well over 5,000. I know that we have in the thousands just in Oakland.
Per the city, and this is per the city census,
Mm-hmm.
we have between sheltered and unsheltered homeless residents of Oakland, we have 2,700. Now, they were quick to also, you know, because when I was presented with that figure by Mr. DeVries and Ms. Tenenbaum, that works under Mr. DeVries, I said, well, where did you get those figures from? And they informed me that, yes, we do censuses twice a year. I mean, once every 2 years. The next one's coming up January 2019. And we just go to these camps and we ask people if they're homeless. We ask them what their situation is. They were quick to point out, though, when I asked them about these figures, like, how do you come up with this number? They said that, well, these are only the people that respond to the census. So we know, based on that there's definitely more than 2,700 homeless in Oakland.
Oh yeah, that means they actually have to either talk to somebody clearly and answer their questions, or
and
they have
to your point, homeless people are very skeptical of outsiders and strangers because
totally.
they don't know. They're just trying to survive. They're just trying to live. So they're very skeptical of people that are coming in just asking them questions about themselves, as any of us would be. If someone came up and knocked on your door and was like, "Hey, how you doing? I'm not going to tell you who I am, and I want to know about, how old you are and how much money you make and blah, 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 blah," you'd be pretty skeptical too, especially if you were in a really compromised state that, homeless people are in. For whatever reason.
I mean, there's people that have other issues where they might not be totally living in a legitimate means as well, but then there's also people that can't even clearly conversate. They can't they can't think in a
your point about mental illness.
So
I mean, if you don't even know how to read a box of Cheerios because of whatever's going on, as you said with that gentleman, how are you gonna be able to tell someone any information, actionable information about yourself so that they can try to help you? How are you going to sit down with someone like that and explain to them HUD rules? Explain to them the process that's necessary to get themselves permanently housed.
Well, we have to go back to a reminder, HUD is not giving funding.
No.
So it still goes to question, which I think that the city of Oakland needs funding from the federal government.
Yes.
The problem isn't even just in Oakland. A lot of the problems that people don't realize that Oakland has comes from people from outside of Oakland coming in. I mean, we definitely have residents who have lived here all their lives that are on the street. We have people that commit crimes that come from different cities, and then people talk about how Oakland is like the worst, but it's like, whenever there's a sideshow, I'm in my house. A lot of those people aren't from here. It's a culture that people used to do, but a lot of the people that used to do it, you're talking about a different day in Oakland. They wouldn't even be caught dead doing it now because it's so expensive to deal with that, ruining your car. But that's a whole other story. So, with the last, let's see, we got about 8 minutes.
I would like to point out one thing that's really interesting is the gentleman that's right below my article there to the left, Prentice Mayo. Shout out to Prentice, great guy. Prentice is in the process of being evicted from the residence that he lives in. And Prentice said that if people, there are places for people to go, and Alameda County will place you someplace else. But the kicker is, in order to accept the handout, the assistance that Alameda County wants to give you, you have to move outside of Alameda
of course.
County
I've known a lot of people
in order to get help.
I've known a lot of people from Oakland who took that, go to Stockton, go to Sacramento, go
So to your
the
point,
city.
we're just trying to
they're just pushing people out.
Just a little bit.
I mean, and then, a lot of the people from the Bay Area and from California are going to other states, so we're making these other states bluer. They might want to start thinking about that for a second. If those people that are upset with us as liberal, progressive, leftist, whatever they want to call us, Antifa, communists, whatever. I don't know. Anyway, so just because we want,
Better blue than you.
I mean,
what I like to say.
I mean, my bad if I think government needs to make a functioning society, okay? Anyways.
For the people.
Yeah.
By the people.
I mean, and so I love that also we did, we were part of the Poor People's Campaign teach-in.
Woo.
And, Parker was there as well. I want to say a few quotes from what I wrote on this that the people there said that I felt was so powerful. so there's a Oakland community leader, John Jones III, who he was he was incarcerated. He got paroled. He had a license to do aircraft repair
Mm-hmm.
as a mechanic. He couldn't get work for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a quote he said. He said, "There's only one place in America anybody is guaranteed a roof over their head, and that's in prison."
That is correct.
That's
and where I come from, Massachusetts. That is, it's been fed to me from my brothers that I served with that are now in law enforcement. That homeless people in areas where there is like more inclement weather will intentionally get themselves arrested and incarcerated in order to receive 3 square meals a day and a roof over their head.
yes. There's some people that are so institutionalized they feel more comfortable in jail.
Yes.
Now let's go to this. Ethel Longscott, who is one of the Poor People campaign, she's one of the committee members. She said 14%.
Shout out to Ethel.
Yes, she's a wonderful woman. 14% of the Laney students' population is homeless. 14% of students.
And
In just this one school alone. We don't even know the other schools.
well, and like the homeless census that the city conducts, that's only the 14% that are willing to talk to us.
Yes. So
we know that number.
yeah, because there's a lot of shame involved in even talking about this stuff, especially when you're talking about young people.
But don't be ashamed, people.
Yeah.
It's okay to ask for help.
And then let me see. I wanted to look at. I think it was on the other side. Sorry, I'm going off a newspaper here. This is just sad. Laney English professor Roger Porter said, as the black population in Oakland has been cut in half, the homeless population is upwards of 70%. So we know where this is affecting. And we also had talked, so you talked about Prentice Mayo, who was one of the students. There were 3 students who were willing to talk about the issues they went through. Terrence Williams
In regards to homelessness.
Yeah, in regards to homelessness and what they're going through. We were going to have Terrence Williams here, but he's actually at a Poor People's campaign meeting right now. He's
Where
so
we will be headed
passionate.
right after this.
I know, we have to run
podcast.
over there. But he said,
Shout out to Terrence.
and you know, all these men that were featured, they just look like regular students. You would never know that these people were homeless. And he said homeless stereotypes plague. Well, you actually wrote this, but he had mentioned this too to me. It says homeless stereotypes. No, you didn't write this. Jeremy Lowe did. Sorry.
Shout out to Jeremy.
Or another one of our staff writers. He said homeless stereotypes plague the minds of employers, which makes it hard to work. So how is he supposed to work? I wish he was here because I would have talked about that. But how if employers look down on you because you don't have a place to live, how are you supposed to get a job to get on your feet?
It's a very paradoxical situation, is it not?
Yeah.
Mhm.
And we have this, I don't know, super classist society. I remember working at at a corporate job that it was publications, and when I was about to move to Oakland, people were like, "Ew, Oakland." Like they felt sorry for me, and I'm like, "Why? I love Oakland." I just thought that was just so bizarre because, I mean, especially when people say they're like these liberals and stuff like that, but why would you look down on somebody for where they live or how they live like that?
Well, I'll be honest. I mean, I lived in the Bay Area for 5 years and probably came to Oakland like maybe 3 or 4 times. You know, and I'm upset with myself that I didn't come more because realistically, there's a stigma attached to Oakland. And the stigma that is attached is that of there's crime and there's it's dangerous, and it's like, well, yeah, those things may exist, but I think when you really get into this, you have to look deeper and say, well, why does this exist?
Yeah.
Oakland never got over the crack epidemic,
No.
just like a lot of black communities all across the United States. And then just when people are starting to figure it out, 2008 hits and people get their houses taken away from them.
Yeah.
So
And they house flipped like crazy. Like they were
Yes.
selling houses out here for dollars.
I mean, the year and a half since I've been back, I've already seen certain properties that I've kept an eye on increase by $100,000 to $150,000
Yeah.
in a year and a half.
Yeah.
And we're not even talking about nice houses. Like, you're gonna have to put a lot of money into these places once you purchase them.
Yeah.
And you know, how are people in that community, how are they going to survive?
Yeah.
Low income in Oakland is $70,000 a year.
Yeah. And I didn't even make that when I was with.
I mean,
It's just-
I don't make that now.
Yeah.
I mean, my wife props me up like a crutch. Thank God. Shout out to my wife. No, I mean, you know, I mean, I just don't understand it. There was that famous blog post that was written, I think, in 2016 by a tech person over in San Francisco, and their point was, I make $160,000 a year, and I'm poor in San Francisco. Now, whereas I may not agree with that individual and his take on it, if you got people that are making 160K, feeling the crunch, how do people that make 35,000 with a few kids, what do? How do they feel?
Man, let me tell you, I've been there.
Yeah.
But we're gonna have to.
You're a mom, 2 kids.
Yeah, unfortunately, we're gonna have to go because there's so many other things that we could talk about. There's more updates. There's a group of activists got a restraining order against the city, and it's working to actually hold one of the camps. It's called Housing and Dignity in the Brookfield neighborhood.
I was there today, and the restraining order goes to the 26th.
Nice. So they're doing a good fight, which I think is historical, and I would like to do an update on that. But we have just a few seconds left, so I want to thank you, Robert Hinton,
Thank
for
you very much.
coming here.
Thank you, Michelle.
And thank you, everybody, for listening in, and I will talk to you. We'll be back next time.
Sweet.
All right, got it done.
I love it. I been wanting to do a fucking podcast for so long. Because Michelle, and I'm
Awesome.